Blessings in Jesus' name. So, in this video, I just want to discuss something. I wrote a letter to Wexford County Council a while back, requesting that they don't contact me again. This was after, you have to understand, 10 years of being on the housing list and then continually taking me off of it, even though they knew I was on social welfare. And I wasn't on social welfare for lack of effort. I worked and cooked as a chef in many different places. I was a musician for 8 years on the national circuit until I couldn't do it anymore. Remember, I'm 40 years old, but I've had a lot of sickness in my younger years. So I would be more tired than the majority of 40-year-olds in my body. And so there would also be a lot of accumulated injury, and the reason is because when I was training as a younger man, because there was a sort of a damage done to my nervous system, I wasn't getting the same feedback that another person might get while they were training. So I tended to get injured more often because my body wasn't telling me when I was lifting too heavy, whereas it would be telling somebody with a healthier nervous system. So that's left me with a lot of injuries and a broken down body. So I was probably training harder than I should have been, given the lack of feedback from my body, giving me that precautionary warning when I was about to lift too heavy or something. So I would just push through it, and probably was breaking my body down too much. And so that would take a toll. You accumulate injuries, and just overworking would take a toll on your body over the years, you know. So I did get stronger, but even at that, I was probably doing damage. So that's just part of the type of sickness I had. Now, that's a reality for me now. So what one person might, when I was a young man, what one person might deem a relatively easy day's work was very difficult for me. I would struggle through it. Physically, I would be very tired all the time while I was doing even the simplest and easiest of jobs. It was just the condition and the state of me back then. And it wasn't through laziness. I was never a lazy person. I was a sick person. I had a sick nervous system. And so people who don't know what's wrong with you, they might perceive you as just lazy bones because you're a young man. You should be able to run up and down there, you know. But youth doesn't discriminate against sickness. What I mean is young people can get sick too, and even if they don't look it. So I was a sick man for a long time, and I eventually got better. I was probably around 23, 24 when I got better. I went back to working full time, and I was well able for it. And I got back into it then. I worked then, and I got into the music business then, and I was doing a lot of late nights, and that caught up with me. That does take its toll on you. That's the guts of 10 years of doing that now, and that really caught up with me. And so I had to stop because I was having to get up early in the morning to my beautiful little daughter, and she was young and full of beans. She'd want me to get up, and I'd be only 2 hours in the bed in the sack, and I'd be and sometimes I'd be sleeping on, and she'd be beside the bed trying to entertain herself, and I felt terrible about it because I'm trying to get sleep to get enough energy so I can engage her and focus on her and give her the energy and the love she needs. And at the same time, I'd be sort of tired. So I was like, this can't continue. And oftentimes I'd be driving home from a gig in Dublin. I'd be getting home at 5 a.m. in the morning, falling asleep at the wheel eventually. And I couldn't keep it up. It became too dangerous. I couldn't keep it up because it became too dangerous. Sleeping at the wheel to take somebody else out of it, not just yourself. And then, Maya not having her dad, or being told your daddy's dead. It just wasn't an option for me anymore. And being too tired for her as well in the morning. So it was a serious thing. I was driving a big comfortable Beamer, and you know how they just, smooth along the road. I was driving a 5 Series. And they would just hum along the road and they put you to sleep. Big comfortable chairs and big, engine just going. Woo. And by the time you're kind of struggling to keep awake, slapping yourself in the face, doing everything to stay awake, and then leaving the window open, turning the radio up, and that wasn't working, nothing was working. It was I was going to fall asleep. I was like, I have to put a stop to this. Yeah, I can't continue this. So anyway, it happened twice where I actually fell asleep at the wheel, and that was enough. Second time it happened was enough. I was like that. And I woke up like that, and I was like, what is going on? And I was veering towards the side of the road. And then, no, that's it. Because I was driving from Dublin City to Rosslare, so I'd be getting home at 5 a.m. as I said. My daughter being at 7, half 7, whatever it was. And, hi, Daddy! Look, and she'd be standing there, beautiful little thing, wanted to play. And so I was just like, I have to do something about this. So anyway, eventually the gigs dried up anyway. They weren't hiring me. And so the gigs were so few and far between anyway, that I reasoned this isn't gainful employment for me. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for a number of reasons. The car was costing me $6,000 because I could only afford to buy bigger older cars because, and of course the tax is higher on them, the insurance is higher on them, and they're gas guzzlers. And so that was costing me the guts of $6,000 a year. So I had to make $6,000 a year before I was making a penny. So it was ridiculous. So they wouldn't entertain me for a new car, with low tax and low fuel consumption, because I didn't have savings up to 6 months, So that's what I had to do, and it became unsustainable because you'd have lads up in Dublin who were just as good as you, young lads, because they're from the virtuoso generation where they would have had access to YouTube to learn guitar early on, and they'd be a lot more accomplished as younger men, And so you'd come to, they'd be able to stick the guitar on their back. They'd be able to go to the venue. The venue would have the PA system, and then they'd do 2 gigs a night. Sure, what was happening? The venues were paying them less because their overheads would be less. So they were reducing the amount that venues were willing to pay simply because of their proximity to the venues and the fact that they didn't have to bring their own PA systems. Because venues will always try to take money back to increase their profit margins on the beer, which is wrong, because a company should always endeavour to offer gainful employment to the person they're employing. It's really wrong when they just try to say, oh, look at, what's it costing you? Oh, come on, we're supplying the PA, and we're giving you 2 gigs a night now. All right, so you want me to work twice as long for less money and still not have gainful employment? That's ridiculous. You're not benefiting from doing the 2 gigs. And then the younger lad's going in there because he's able to hold his own in the gig, fair play to him. And then you're going up to Dublin with this big car under you that's motorway worthy, and it's costing you an arm and a leg, and you're getting to the gig and they're offering you the same as they're offering the guy just out of college or in college, just making a few extra quid at the weekend. How did they think that was sustainable for professionals? It doesn't matter whether they're a young lad going to college. If they can do the job, they should be getting the going rate for it. If they can hold their own in a gig, they should be getting the going rate. Doesn't matter what age they are. You see, this is why our forefathers enshrined gainful employment. And when I was, for that entire 8 years, I wasn't getting gainful employment. I'd be getting 1, 2, maybe 3 gigs a weekend. And that was because you weren't shaking the right hands with the right people in the right lodge. That's all that was. And they were trying to give you a taster of it so that you'd sell your soul to get the 4 gigs a week, which would be your gainful employment. And so, if you're working 5 nights a week, if you were driving to Dublin from Rosslare 5 nights a week, you'd be in tatters. You would, because you'd be only getting home at 5 a.m. in the morning after leaving maybe 5 a.m. before, so it's taking up 12 hours. You're really working 12 hours, because that's the amount of time it takes out of your day. And then you're having to explain that to the missus. She's pretty much learning to be on her own, and then you're only getting into the bed beside her and disrupting her sleep. So you kind of become sort of an imposition in the household rather than somebody supporting it and being actively involved in it. So it's not surprising that you grow apart from somebody for spending that much time away from them. But and it wasn't my intention, you know. But these things happen, and so I split from my partner, and regretfully, but this is how life goes on. And I had the little one with me, which was a joy to watch her growing up, and all her, you know, moments as a child, like bringing her to Johnstown Castle and her going on her little bike and all of that stuff. You know, I don't forget it. And but you go through all of these seasons in your life, don't we? And the point I'm trying to make, I don't want to digress too much, but I'm just like you. I'm just a man like you. I'm just a human being. I'm just trying to get by in the world. And because I'm Christian, I'm being persecuted. I'm being left on the side of the pavement here. And you know, I appreciate that. You know, most people have jobs, but most people are able-bodied. I'm not able-bodied. I'm not. I have 2 torn rotator cuffs. I have a gammy hip. I have a repetitive strain injury in my hand and in my shoulder from chopping for years. I won't tell you the restaurant that had us like slaves chopping onions and peppers, but they should have invested in a robo-coupe, and they could have made better use of us. But at one stage we were filling rubbish bins full of onions and peppers. It was ridiculous, and they'd leave you doing that for hours. It was wrong. Like, they should have invested in a robo-coupe. It would have cost them maybe €500, but it's only a week's wages for a man, and they would have had it in perpetuity, because those things come with a warranty. And they could have had us doing other things and up the standard of the food. But that's not what they chose to do. They chose to have us getting repetitive strain injury instead. So once you get repetitive strain injury, it lasts a lifetime. It doesn't go away, because you've sort of changed the composition of the muscle so that you've sort of gammied it. You know, it doesn't really work the way it should, in the same way that it should. Now it will go away somewhat over time, but it has a tendency to come back every now and again. Now, in fairness, I haven't suffered with that as I used to in a long time, but it's there, you know. Lots of injuries going on, but you might notice that even though I'm weak in my body, I'm strong in my spirit. And so the physical body is only one aspect of our being. But the point I'm making to you is this: for 10 years, even though I was really trying my hardest and trying my best that I possibly could, and I always did, I always tried my best. You know, I tried my best even with deviated septum when I was in music. I really tried to sing to the best of my ability, even though I had an anatomical deviation. And I did. I learned. I sort of accommodated it a bit. Sometimes I got a bit shouty, but that was probably due to just the deviation in my septum and trying to reach the volumes and that kind of stuff, you know. But I was just doing my best with what I had to work with. My ability to sing far proceeded or exceeded my physical capacity to, because of the deviation. So I had to try to learn to accommodate the physical deviation, and I did for many years. But sometimes we get strong in the wrong ways, and it eventually leads to an injury. So anyway, that's all history. That's all behind me. I struggled. I've had a lot of failures in my life, and most of it's probably because I didn't have good guidance. But having said that, you know, the runt of the litter, the black sheep, doesn't usually have good guidance. And it's not like the runt of the litter doesn't really describe that you're not gifted, talented, hardworking or willing. That's not what being the runt of the litter is. The runt of the litter is the one who's abandoned, the one who's left to the wolves, the one who's the dog's body around the place, the one who's not really kept in the loop. And we as God's people, that's the way we're treated in this world, because those who are not like us identify us early on. You see the point? So we're really an easy target for them, like. You know what I mean? So, but God keeps us. He keeps us throughout all our suffering and throughout that abandonment that we suffer, you know. And I suppose they were probably surprised that I came back as strong as I did come back, even despite the fact that they sort of butchered me for so many years, and those who would come against the people of God, that is, and they come against us in secret even when we're walking in ignorance. We're not even aware that they're there and they're attacking us, you know what I mean? So that's really stacked against you. It's sort of low-hanging fruit for them, easy target stuff. But if it wasn't for the Lord God, then so it glorifies Him, because our enemies are much more powerful than we are. And they're older, more experienced, more faculty. Even though their spirit is futile, they're still a deadly host. And so it's to God's glory and not theirs that they're not able to destroy us. And it's not from a lack of effort, because they are committed 100% to the slaughter, because they've a cruel master over them who makes sure they are. And that's the devil. That's the fallen Lucifer, who is no more as he was. So the point I'm making to you is this. This government have an obligation towards me. I've been a contributing member of society to the best of my ability, and I really have. And I've gone through a number of different illnesses, and God is my witness. And so I've gone through drug addiction. I've gone through many different things, and people often think drug addiction is self-inflicted. They pull that card and they say, you're doing that to yourself, and you are physically doing it to yourself. But once you're under addiction, you're under a spirit. Once you're under addiction, you're under a bondage. It's a bondage that you're in. You're now serving that substance and seeking it out. It's like a heroin addict, but any drug will have you in a similar position to a lesser extent, but it's still a similar position. You're still serving it. Even the person who smokes, if they go without cigarettes for long enough, they won't be themselves. They'll be ratting, So addictive substances, as we know, they have withdrawal symptoms, and we know that they have a sort of a power over us. And I was like that with marijuana for many years. I abused solvents. So my development was arrested early on in my life, and as is the case with many people. And this is not feel sorry for me, get the violin out, but I do feel as though I have a duty to declare my position before my fellow man and my fellow Irish person in this country. Because when I say that the government are obligated to help me in this situation, they really are. Because I'm willing to work, I'm not able to work. I've always contributed to the best of my ability, and given even strongholds that I was under, I was still contributing to the best of my ability, seeking to do the best, seeking to do right by people, seeking to love others as the best I could. And I often went off track and off course on that, because I allowed wrong influence in, and I made wrong and bad decisions, as we all do. But I'm not making excuses for myself here. What I'm saying is that I did try my best. I can say that. And so, because I've been a contributing member of society to the best of my ability, society does have an obligation towards me. It does have an obligation towards anybody, even if they don't try their best, because they have an obligation to take care of those who are less fortunate for one or another reason. And fortune comes in many different ways. If sickness comes into a person's life, that affects all areas of their life. Even if they're not a lazy person, they're not going to be able to work. And that's why we have gainful employment. The real reason for gainful employment is to help the person that can't work. That's the real reason for it. The gain is supposed to be for your neighbour, and that's how God designed it. But the Western world deviated away from the original design. And it's all dog eat dog. I serve me, I'm my own best friend, mind yourself, all that kind of stuff. That's all satanic. And why is that being implemented now as the sort of leaven, or the pervasive motto that people sort of repeat as a mantra all across the face of mainstream media and popular culture? Because it's divisive. It doesn't bring people together to support each other, it separates them. And that's why it's there, because the devil is divisive. And the bad leaven he encourages in society is one that is divisive. And so what he intends to do is separate people and give them an inability to support each other when it's necessary. Now, I can tell you, hand on heart, that since I've become homeless, people have been reaching out to me with cash money. They have. You know, fake Christians, some unbelievers. You know, there are many fake Christians on Facebook. There really are. And the devil has them there as wolves among the sheep, because he's trying to get into your life one way or another. He's trying to establish a currency with you. You need me. You rely on me. I gave you this when you needed it the most. All that kind of stuff. That's what the devil's trying to do. But Jesus said to the apostles, go out and take nothing from the Gentiles. Now, what was the purpose of that? Was it a sort of a prideful, I don't need you? Just use the expression just to give you an idea of the spirit that's been operated in. Do you know that? I'll look after myself. You know, sort of cut off your own nose to spite your face. No, absolutely not. That's not how God operates. The point and the purpose of that was so that people would see that God would provide for them, even though they wouldn't. And so it was for the namesake of God, so that people would know that God was among them and that he would be glorified for sustaining them. Now, one might say, well, where's your God now? Who's sustaining you? And by the way, why are you not taking money from pagans? Don't you think that pagans are involved in paying tax? Well, of course they are, but there's a differentiation. The differentiation is that you're not taking from anybody's personal accounts, and that's what's important. Because people are already paying their taxes to help people who are homeless. People are already paying taxes to help people who are jobless. People are already paying taxes to help people. So, and what we recognise as Christians is that God has instituted all powers on the earth. And so if there's a situation where God has implemented powers on the earth and the government is a result of that, well, then the government have to submit to the authority of Jesus and do what he has mandated them to do. Do you think that Satan wants to help people? No, he has to allow people to be helped. You see the difference? Because God is the one implementing the structure and the institution. So he's the one above all institutions. The Bible says that God is above all God is above all principalities, powers, rulers and dominions. So that if God is above all powers and dominions and he instituted all power on the earth, we can take from the government, but we shouldn't take from our neighbour. Now, is that a contradiction, given that I just said the reason we have gainful employment is so that we can help each other? No, I'll tell you why it's not. Because I'm representing God as a Christian. This is not the Christian Commonwealth. This is Gentile country. This is where people are not following Jesus. If I was in the Christian Commonwealth, then obviously gainful employment would be a given. But people are the point I'm making is that when people abandon what God has said is the proper way to order society, what ends up happening is people are divided and conquered. So, do I want to see gainful employment return to the Western world? Of course I do, because it gives people the opportunity to learn about God and the way he has encouraged society to be ordered. Do I want people in the Western world to come to Christ and be Christians? Yes, of course I do. But God has given me a level and a degree of spiritual discernment so that I would be able to tell the difference between true Christians and fake Christians. Do you see the point I'm making to you? Now back to the point of this video. This government, because all powers are instituted on the earth by God, and even the preamble of the Irish government speaks of that. It says, in the name of the most holy Trinity, from and to whom as our final end, all actions both of men and states must be referred. We the people of Era, humbly acknowledging all our obligations to our divine Lord Jesus Christ, who sustained our fathers through centuries of trial. So our government, our preamble, our constitution, the power instituted by God, acknowledges God in it, which shows us that it has to submit to him, whether it likes to or not. You see the point I'm making to you now? So that the reason there are provisions in society and society's not much worse is because of Jesus, not because of the devil or his demons. They're not helpers, they're hinderers. They hide behind the provision of God, pretending that it's them doing it. That's the lure, that's the trap, that's the net. You see the point now? So any provision and all provision comes from God Most High. The devil can't put a bowl of cornflakes on your table. Now, am I talking around the houses and contradicting myself? No, let me reiterate. Am I for proper order in society? Of course I am, because God is a God of order. Where does the power over authority come from? It comes from God. But most people in the government aren't Christians. That's true. Even if they profess to be, they're not. So, do I judge them all with the same hand? No, I don't judge them with finality. What I'm saying is that many people who profess to be Christians aren't. Especially those who profess to be Christian simply so they're perceived as upright people so they can get into influential positions in government. That's why many people initially and still to this day associated with Christianity. They never intended to follow God, they just wanted the benefits of being perceived as somebody who is upright in their morality and in their morals, which would give them access to cross the thresholds of the most vulnerable orphans and widows in society. Because that's who they target. Wolves target the weak in the herd, so to speak. So that's why they want people in the community to think that they're upstanding pillars of society, so that they can get close enough to do harm to people who are vulnerable in those positions. Because they get to the foremost sort of precipice of, or peak of, or front line of those organs of state, and so that they can touch the people who are weak. And so the people who are weak and vulnerable in that position, that's when the demons get into those people who they've placed in office to get as close as possible as they can to the vulnerable. And that's how the wolves enter into society to attack the vulnerable. So the wolves are fake Christians. The wolves in sheep's clothing. You get it now? So whilst there is order in society, that order comes from God. What the devil's trying to do is turn it upside down. But he can't just do it overnight or everybody be dizzy. What he's doing is he's slowly rotating it. So that by the time people are upside down and being born into an upside down world, they don't even know they're upside down. The Bible says that in the latter days, that which is evil will be considered good, and that which is good will be considered evil. So when people like me crop up and start telling the truth and start exposing Satan's agenda before the communities, he wants to keep us quiet and wars against our lives. So he denies us things like housing. He denies us things like work in a timely fashion. See, when you delay something long enough and then you put somebody right in the deep end, likelihood is they're not going to be conditioned to do the work. So they're always trying to sort of make your environment as difficult and as pressing and as stressful as they possibly can, both on your body and on your psychology. Because it's a psychological warfare that they're engaged in. So it's like, oh, he was out at work for 6 months and now he has to go back to work. Throw him in the deep end at work. And sure, you break him down, wear him down, break him down. So isn't that what they used to do years ago to the societies of old? They would give them hard labour. Now, hard labour is relative. So if you were strong, somebody would have to give you, harder labour than you're used to give you hard labour. But if they want you to keep working, they can't totally incapacitate you, because then they wouldn't benefit from your labour and you'd just be on the ground in a heap. So what they do is they try to work you as hard as they possibly can whilst keeping you functioning. And the reason for that is to kind of knock the spirit out of you, to kind of leave you worn down so that you're not going to get any ideas into your head about a rebellion or any ideas into your head about usurping the powers or just sort of running the evil ones out of the community and out of the game. And so that's why they keep people downtrodden. It's not so that it's not merely just because they enjoy doing it, and they do. It's because it has the function of preventing people from removing them from government. So people are so busy adding up their money week to week. They're working for the weekend. Well, how can people plan 200 years ahead like they do? So whilst they make their plans, and they make the plans long term, maybe even longer than that of a human life, because they're in the earth for thousands of years. So they're spirits. So they're planning things for centuries, and we're planning things for till the weekend. You see the point? So they're planning way above your head, strategizing on how to take things over. And you're just thinking, oh, I need my bag of sausages. I need me. And there's nothing wrong with that, to live day to day, because, sufficient for the day are its troubles. But they have plans for longer, and they're using probabilities and things of that nature. So, we're planning week to week. It's just to make you aware that there are spirits working above your head who have been in this earth, some of them since it was created, shortly after it was created. So, and some came into existence then shortly after that. But they're here for thousands of years, causing the same problems and trying to implement the same mechanisms, and they know what they're doing. And so the human beings that they enter into are merely their vessels. They become merely a body that they can use in the earth to get things done. So be aware of that. So I want to bring this video to a wrap. There's a reason I won't accept money straight out of a person's pocket, because they need it. And there's a reason they pay tax. It's so that the government will help people in need. Now, that's not contradictory. You're paying your tax is your contribution. Now, there might come a time where you want to make another monetary contribution, and that's fine if you feel you have it or whatever. But the government have to step in first. Otherwise, people are just throwing money at a problem that the government should be resolving. It's different if you already have your house and people want to give you a few quid to prop you up and support you and encourage you and bring you on. But if they're only throwing the few quid at you to keep you alive, the government can kind of stand back and allow things to get worse. It's like, give a man a fish, you leave for the day. Give a man a fishing rod, you leave for life. And as long as people are throwing money at the problem, then, and I don't discourage people from trying to help monetarily, those who would receive it well. What I'm saying is that sometimes it takes the incumbency and the responsibility off the government, because the government can say, well, this person has money. Well, they only have money because you haven't done what you should have done in a timely fashion. And they're getting that money from elsewhere, but the money they're getting isn't enough to resolve the problem that you've left them in. So you're not excused because that person has a few quid from doing what you're obligated to do for them. Because the people who are giving them the few quid have also paid taxes that put you in a position where you're earning big money, and you're failing in that position, in that privileged position, and that which has lots of responsibility with it, and you're failing to implement your office properly so that this person isn't on the side of the street. So how long do people throw money at the problem so that you can leave the person on the side of the street? They might have a fat belly, but they still don't have a house, and so their body can't rest well. But especially if that person has made it clear to the government and to the municipality and the locality that they can't eat but by cooking. They can't survive eating the stuff out of the shop alone. They have to cook because of dietary problems that has been diagnosed and noticed by the local medical field. So you have to be very aware that when somebody has food allergies, you can't leave them in a position where you're telling them to consume stuff that they're allergic to. That's putting their life in danger. You can slowly kill somebody that way. They might have a low-grade allergy to something. You keep feeding them that something, and they're going to eventually be in a position where they can't even go to the toilet, let alone absorb the food they're eating, because their bowel is in such bad condition. So I've made this very clear to the government. I made it very clear to the housing authorities. I made it very clear to the county council. The doctors are aware of it. The emergency room is aware of it. I've been in there a number of times with allergic reactions to food. A number of times. And the lady only said to me the other day when I was in there yesterday, she said, "You've been in here before." And I said, "Yeah, I was in here before with allergic reactions." She said, "That's right." So at what stage are they going to step up and say, this man needs our help? This man has dietary issues. He's got maybe an autoimmune condition or a hyperactive immune system like his father and his sister. So why are we neglecting this man? Now granted, yesterday when I was in the accident emergency room, the woman said, we have social workers here, but you're in on the wrong day because they're not in today. So, but there was no follow-up. You know, if you're aware that I have allergies and I'm in that situation where I'm potentially, my life is in danger, my health is in danger, my general well-being is in danger because of what I'm being forced to eat and consume, and because of how I've been unable to cook what I need to cook to survive and to have a staple on a regular basis. And then you don't step in and make the necessary authorities aware of that. Then you have neglected that person, and that's inexcusable in your role in your office. Because when you're in a position like that, and it's hard work to work in a hospital, there's no doubt about that, and your head's going and you've patient coming in after patient after patient, but there's great responsibility that goes with working in those hospitals, and they are probably underpaid, in fairness to them, and they should be paid more. But having said that, they still have responsibility and incumbency upon them when you've been in a number of times to make sure that you have access, because this government, our Irish government, have to make food and water available to its citizens. If they know that you have allergic reactions to food, and they know that you're not well because of what you're eating, and they know that can be resolved by giving you access to cooking facilities, and they don't give you access to those cooking facilities, they are failing you and putting your life in danger. They are. And I've made the county council aware of that. So if you're wondering why I discontinued communications with the county councillors, because they had only become a potential source of frustration and disruption in my life. And so at some stage you have to say, you're not doing what's right. You're not doing what's right here. You had 10 years to offer me an accommodation that you would help me to pay for, knowing that I'm trying to work and not getting gainful employment, so that I have to remain on the social welfare, knowing that my name is on the housing list, knowing that I have a dependent, knowing that I've been sick, knowing that I have food allergies, knowing that I've been houseless, and all you're going to do is send me to a place that prepares the same meal for everybody in it. No, they can't accommodate my food allergies because I've so many of them that they would have to cook a very specific food for me. And you know, if they're not going to produce that food, where am I otherwise going to eat from? And people will say, you must be eating something. I'm eating something, but it's not good for me. It's making me sick and weakening my body. Do you understand now? And it has me showing up in the hospitals, has me showing up in the doctors, it has me unable to go to the loo, it has me sick and weak in my body, so I'm more susceptible to injury. There's all of that going on, and they're aware of it. These authorities, these municipalities in Wexford Town are aware of it. The medical field, the housing authorities, they're all aware of my situation, and they're deliberately failing to do anything about it. And so it got to the point where it would have been futile, an absolutely futile exercise, to continue communicating with people who are aware of your situation and have elected to do nothing about it. So the next time somebody says, oh, you're a big liar, you're the one that told the council to stop communicating with you. How long did they have before that? 10 years? And what did they do to somebody with a history of drug use, drug dependency as a younger man? Send them to a place where they're using Class A crack cocaine and smoking marijuana on a daily basis, and they're doing nothing to prevent it or stop it, despite the emergency unit in the County Council of Wexford telling me that they have a line of people, a path trodden, a worn pathway in the grass up to them, so to speak, telling them of the drug use in Osenham House. And they're doing nothing about it, deferring back to DePaul, and then DePaul defer to them. And who's taking responsibility? So they're passing the buck from DePaul back to the council, back to DePaul. You ring DePaul directly and ask them for access to their hostel, and they'll send you back to the county council, saying that they're the only ones who refer people to the hostel. Then you go to the county council and you say, guys, the hostel's not up to scratch. Oh, you need to talk to the guys at Osenham House there. What? You're referring people there. And then you're not listening to people. If you sent me to a house, and I had a landlord, and they were allowing other tenants to smoke drugs there, who would I go to make the complaint? The guards, maybe. Is that who we need to involve in this thing, so that the county council will do their job properly? Because people are using drugs in Osnum House. Marijuana, crack cocaine. And I have a letter in my bag saying that that's the place that they will send homeless men, is up to Osnum House. But that's the knee-jerk place they send them. It doesn't matter if you have a history of heroin use. Just came out of prison. Doesn't matter if you're going to go there and smoke marijuana all day long. They will send you there so long as you have the €80 to pay for the room. How is that considerate of everybody in the hostel? Now, if you're going to have people there smoking drugs and you know about it, and you're in the emergency housing unit, and you're in the county council office, and you're going to do nothing about it, what happens then? The guards have to come to you because you're facilitating drug use by refusing to take responsibility after knowing that it's taking place, because it's not one person, it's not two, it's a stream of people going up to that county council and telling people what's going on in Osmond House, and they're doing nothing about it. So that's not a solution for somebody like me, and they know that. Focus Ireland will point you back to the council. Simon Community will point you back to the council. Yet I have it that Focus Ireland have given a man who I chat to every now and again in Wexford town an apartment. A homeless man, they gave him an apartment. I won't say who it is, I don't need to bring him into it. But he'd be well known in the town. They gave him an apartment. And he came up to me and said, I'll speak to my social worker, see if I can help in any way. I'll speak to the guys in Focus Ireland. I heard nothing more. So what's the point of the Simon Community if all they'll do is send you to the county council? What's the point of Focus Ireland if all they'll do is send you to the county council? What's the point of all the rest of them? DePaul, if they're just send you to the county council. So what they have done is funneled everybody into the county council and made them God over whether you're on the street or not. You see how they operate now? But when somebody tries to hold the county council responsible, they'll point back to DePaul. So everybody's pointing at everybody else. They're responsible. No, they are. No, they are. No, they are. No. And then people are trying to throw money at the problem. Even after they've paid tax. And the devil's laughing up his sleeve. Ho, ho, ho. Woe, prancer, woe, dancer. But these people have to fulfill their office. They have to. So what I will pursue now is not dealing directly with the people I've already dealt with in the council who have failed me. I wrote a letter saying I will not deal with them directly, and I meant it. Not so long as I live. But I will go to the person in charge of the council and tell them exactly what's happening, because this is unacceptable. I'm a 39-year-old man who's willing to work. I've exhibited that. I went to work in Subway. I worked as hard as I possibly could. The man who works there says you work hard, you work fast. I did my absolute best. I never walked out of the place. I always finished the shift. And even when I was sore and tired and injured. And I gave them timely notice when I was injured, and the cert from the hospital and stuff like that to show I was injured, and I spoke to doctors and stuff like that, and they were as helpful as they could have been. And they really were trying to accommodate me in Subway and helpful. I will say that they were. I'd like to work there again sometime. I really would. When I'm strong. Because if you don't have a house to live in, how can you get strong? If you can't eat food, how can you get strong? How can I go and work in Subway and work really hard on making your sambos if I'm not getting food into myself? Because I don't have the cooking facilities. And they're aware of all of these little intricacies in my situation, and they're still electing to do nothing. And they'll throw it back at me and say, well, you're the one that wrote the letter telling us not to contact you. How long did you have prior to that to help me in a timely fashion? You knew I was up at 72 King Street. You knew I was up there, and you knew I was trying to survive on €208 a week, and you knew I was paying 35 of that to my daughter. You know the situation, you knew it then and you know it now, and you elected not to get involved, not to extend the arm of help, and you did it knowingly. So you can't say that the county council has been trying to help me and I just was the one who pulled the plug. It's going on for years. Years. Absolute years. And only on one occasion did I actually get housing assistance payment from the social wealth, from the county council, and it was only for a short amount of time. I've gotten very little help from the county council, very little. Maybe 3-4 months worth of housing assistance payment, and that's it. And that's when my daughter was living with me. So that was probably more about her than me. And that's the truth of the matter. Because recently they tried to remove guardianship from me in this municipality, in the circuit court, in the family court. They removed guardianship. Oh, but don't talk to your daughter about it. I'm told she's too young. No, she's not. She's 9. They're trying to do as much harm as they possibly can and hide the fact that they're doing the harm, because wolves like to hide in the hedges until they're about to pounce. And they're vain and boastful. They love themselves. Guys, the County Council in Wexford is a corrupt organisation, and the only person I'll talk to now in terms of getting a place to stay is somebody above them. But somebody from the Irish government has to reach out to me and help me, because they're obligated to. They're absolutely obligated to, in Jesus' name, because Jesus is the one that gives them the power and the authority to make these decisions, because he's the one that institutes all power. Now, the Wexford County Council office is a corrupt organisation. They're hiding. They're running from helping me. I was down in 72 King Street with the €200, paying the 35 to my daughter, which I don't begrudge at all. I would only want to pay more, and when I was working I upped it to 50. I was only working for a short period of time in Schnitzel House there. I upped it to 50. And I wouldn't begrudge it. If I could give more, I would. No problem. And just because they talk about removing guardianship wouldn't stop me paying her. I still pay her, even though I'm not obligated by law to pay her anymore. I'm still doing it, because they're not the ones pulling the strings in my decision-making processes. They're not the ones who make the decisions in my household. What they write on paper is irrelevant. It doesn't actually have any reach, because long before any guardianship was removed by district court, which they haven't actually done it because they can't, it's only a facade. The judge hasn't even given a reason that he came to that conclusion. It's all a facade. There's no power in it whatsoever. It's a rogue court. They haven't established jurisdiction, because they're not functioning properly as they should. So even though they've removed this guardianship, they haven't actually effectively prevented anything, because prior to that her mother was still trying to stop me accessing her, simply because I was preaching, saying, have you lost your mind? I don't think you're stable enough to take care of your daughter, so you're not going to be even seeing her unless you stop preaching. So they even tried to use her against me. So guys, you need to wake up to what's really going on here. The government of Ireland have to take care of me. They have to, because their county council housing department in Wexford have failed to. Not only that, they actually became a disruption in my life, sending me letters asking for proof of address when they must have had the address I was living at in order to send me the letter in the first place. And then saying, after I called them up and said, why are you asking me for proof of address? You know where I live. And then they're saying, well, we need proof of address. Well, why do you need proof of address if you won't help me with housing assistance payment at that address? Just for correspondence? And why would that be something that would prevent you then from continuing leaving me on the housing list? When you want the address I'm living at that you won't help me pay for, even though you were able to send me that letter. What are they at? They have only, and then they took my name off the housing list on the basis that they deemed I hadn't got back to them in a timely fashion. Sure, as soon as I got the letter and was aware of it, I got back to them, as far as I can recall. And then I had a phone conversation with somebody in the office, and they said, oh, don't worry about that, we'll sort it. And then when I went into the office in person, they told me they'd taken me off the housing list. I was like, what are they doing in here? So even though they weren't helping me, they wanted proof of address. How did they suppose, what proof of address would they have accepted? They knew I didn't have a lease. Would they have accepted a rent receipt? Why would they accept it to prove my address and not accept it to be the reason they give me the housing assistance payment or to qualify me for it? I was already eligible for housing assistance payment. Why were they asking me for a proof of address if they weren't going to give me money at that address? They were only disrupting my life. So it got ridiculous. So it had to be nipped in the bud. They had to be prevented from further communicating with me, especially when they were only doing so as a sort of a ridiculousness. They weren't actually attempting to help in any way. Sort of like, give this lad a poke. You haven't spoken to him in a while, let's wind him up. What do you want to know my proof of address for if it's not going to aid you in supplying what you should be supplying me with? What, to prove that I still exist? Pick up the phone. Send an email. They had my email address. Why did they elect to send a letter? Why didn't they ring? They had my phone number. They had my phone number, my email address. They didn't try any of those other forms of contact. But they can send a letter to a place they require proof of address for. How did they manage to send the letter to the place they required proof of address for? So, if you continue communicating with those people, you're actually facilitating them and becoming a disruption in your life, especially after they've been shown to not behave in a way that is logical or reasonable. So I cut all contact with them 10 years on. So, guys, they're obligated. The government are obligated. The government have to, by law, make food and water available to the members of society. They have to. Now, I've made them aware that I have to be able to access cooking facilities to stay healthy. Or at least have somebody who can cook for me, who will cook what I need to consume to stay healthy. They're aware of this. Yet they still said, well, all we have is Osnum House. And I have a letter in my bags. All it says is, I said, will you write me a letter stating that you only send people to Osnum House and not hotels? Oh no, we're not sending you to a hotel today. No, we're not. I said, well, and one might ask, well, what's a hotel? You're still not going to be able to cook there. That's true. But at least you won't be exposed to Class A drugs and marijuana when you have a history of drug use. So they weren't doing what they know to do, that they should be doing. And what's the point of having expertise in the sector in terms of DePaul if you're only going to defer to the county council anyway for referrals? What use are DePaul then? What use are the Simon community? What use are Focus Ireland if they're only going to send you to the county council? No, they help who they want to help. And everyone else gets deferred to the council, and the council refers to Osnum House. And they'll send whoever they want to the hotel, or whoever they want to the B&B, or Focus Ireland will organise an apartment for somebody else. But why not the Christian preacher, who they know has food allergies and has specialised needs? That's nothing more than neglect to the highest extent and degree. What's happening in this municipality is inhumane. It's crime against humanity. You might say, no, it's crime against Stephen. Am I not human? They're breaching laws that protect human life. The Irish government are obligated to provide food and water, access to it. And they know I have special needs in the way of food. They know that now. I've been in the accident and emergency on a number of occasions. I've been with the doctors getting blood tests to see if there were infections going on that were causing this heightened response in the gut. This is going on for years. I've had inflammation in my sinuses. I've been to ear, nose and throat specialists. It's cost me a lot of money. And eventually they said, you've deviated sinus. The physiology within your sinuses has changed. This is diagnosed. It was diagnosed in one of the hospitals. I think it was Wexford Hospital that he said that. Bangalore Mahesh is the doctor's name. So, if Bangalore can diagnose that, and that should be on my file. All of this stuff should be on my file, and if it's not, something's wrong. And if it's on my file, then the doctor, Paul Curran, should have it. And if he's not, willing to engage me on that level and ensure that I'm getting the right diet and access to food, and the community and the society and the powers and the organisations that are involved in providing that food and water to the members of the community are not actually going about doing that, they're committing serious crimes and failing in their office. Because they have better knowledge and are failing to do it. There's no excuse for it. What they're doing is very wrong.